Greetings and welcome to this episode of Everyday Enchantment. I am your host, Stacey Andon, and today I have one of the most incredible people on the planet, Helen Young-McLaughlin, and she is not only is she the CEO and founder of the Leverage Academy, which we will talk about what is the Leverage Academy. She is an ICF certified leadership development coach. So she's in the corporate world making change happen with leaders every day, which I absolutely love. And her passion is to transform that middle management, right? Those all the people that are making so much change and so much influence in the corporate world into the company's most valuable assets. And we are going to talk about how do you do that? How do you change corporate culture? All that hustle, burnout, exhaustion that we are all so over and done with. How do we actually create sustainable change and something better? That is today's conversation. Greetings! I have goosebumps. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today, my fabulous friend. How are you?
I am good, and I am equally thrilled to be here with you today.
Sweetness. So one of the things, and for the audience that is listening, you and I have worked together for a long time. We've known each other over a decade, probably maybe even close to a decade and a half,
Yes,
because we both are passionate about training and leadership and development in the corporate world, which not everybody always thinks of me that way, but I absolutely have passion in that space as well, because I think so often that the burnout, the hustle culture, right? All of those things that people might be experiencing in their personal life, they get up every day and they're greeting as they go to work. And I know you and I both feel very, very passionate about how do we actually change that so that people are not burning out at every turn in their personal lives as well as their professional lives.
absolutely. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's always great
Yay!
to be in your presence.
Thank
And this is a topic that is a big passion of mine, as you know. Um, it's what we've learned. We've learned to
you.
be in this hustle culture. We have learned to just keep doing more, keep doing more. And I'm just going to say we're going to start with one company at a time. That's how I look at
Mhm.
it. That's how I can tackle it, so to speak. And it's what excites me because when you get one company that really understands how they need to make some shifts, ooh, it can make a
Yeah.
huge difference. And that can become in a good way infectious because then they share it with someone else and they're willing to, commit the time and energy. But we definitely need to take a couple steps back and really reflect.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that you're right for so often. And I think for whatever generation I'm in, I think I'm an X or something. It's like we just drank the Kool-Aid of going to school, right? Getting good grades, getting into college or some kind of other program or whatever it was, getting into the workforce, and then just adopted the productivity capitalistic, all the models out there that basically said the more you work, the better you are. And
Oh,
so
yes.
right? So if you work 30 hours or 40 hours, 50 hours was better, 60 hours was better. Wait, you get rewarded. I mean, I know I got rewarded for putting in more time and sacrificing your own personal life for so many years. That was kind of the way that again got modeled for me, and then the expectation coming into kind of my corporate life, where it was like we're watching how many hours you put in, we're watching the sacrifices you're making, and you were pitted against each other so often, against your peers and colleagues and other employees, so that it was like again this hierarchy of who's the best, who's the most loyal of an employee and contributor leader in the company. based on these things that when you start to take them apart, the well-being of our personal health, just our
Mm,
state of mind, all you and I, this is what
yeah.
we I feel like
I'm telling you, I'm breaking out in hives just listening to this because it's so true. I
yeah.
mean, obviously, the generations and how we grew up that influences our
Mhm,
work ethic, right? There's
mhm.
so many different influential factors,
Yeah.
and that is how I grew up, right?
Mhm.
You work hard, you do the I'm doing air quotes, the right
Yep.
thing, you get in early, so all of these proving components.
Mm.
And that does spill over. I think
Yeah.
the younger generations are learning a little bit differently. So there may be a little friction in the workplace related
Agreed.
to are they are
Totally
they
agree with you
leaving
on
at
that.
4 p.m.? Like there's a lot of judgment. I've heard some of my clients, I've heard
Mhm,
um, other groups that I've talked to and connected with have these judgments, and we need to be really mindful of those
mhm.
because personally, when I hear a client of mine say, I went for a run during my lunch break, or I actually met a friend for lunch today, I
Yeah,
am celebrating the hell out of them
I love it.
because what they're putting first is something that's really important and
Yeah.
it's one of their values. So
Mm,
they're saying, I value taking a break. I
yes.
value connecting. And, hey, let's do a little bit more of that. Let's be careful of when we go. And I'm not going to lie, I've probably said this too. Like, I'm not going to lie.
Put
Oh,
it out
must
there. I
be
can't
nice.
wait. Ah, I
Mm.
know many people in my personal
Oh,
life
must be nice.
that somebody very close to me who says used to say that a lot. Must be nice. And you're right. It's this like I can't do it. I'm not giving myself permission for it, for whatever that is. And so it's this judgy kind of sticky energy that
Yep.
then we create. And again, I think a lot, tell me what you think about this, but I think a lot of that too is like trying to get people back into this one lane highway or this box of what a good worker is supposed to be or a good leader is supposed to be. And then you throw in one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is then you throw in the pandemic, which put things all sorts of upside down, sideways. And I'm so curious what you think the pandemic did to like this culture and all of these attitudes that a lot of us still were carrying around.
Well, it's been sad, fascinating, all combined in one to watch the changes that have happened because one of the things that I've noticed when companies had to shift to
Mhm.
remote work and managers, that's the group that I specifically tend to spotlight and work with and want to empower and encourage um, companies to really pay attention to. They they're not sure what to do at this point. So what's happening, unfortunately, is that people got into a different mindset, which is I need to now wake up and roll right into work.
Yeah.
So here we're trying to navigate work from home. What does it mean? Not
Mhm.
everybody has the ability to have their own office, so they're in this shared space,
Yeah.
where the dishes are dirty, and we're being influenced by so many things at once.
That's a good
So
point.
it can feel overwhelming for people. They got into a habit. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying a number of people that I have
Mhm.
been connecting with got into this habit of, okay, I'm just going to roll out of bed and I'm going to go straight to work, straight to my laptop.
Yep.
Same thing happens at night. I'm just going to peek in and tap. And so, where are the boundaries?
Yeah.
And I can tell you for sure last year, a large number of the clients that we were working together, they were experiencing high volumes of stress, some
Mm.
some burnout, because if you have chronic stress over a period of time, that
Yeah.
absolutely can lead to burnout. And what I think was happening is companies were still, thinking about the leaders inside companies, they were still trying to navigate the pivoting and all of that, where they didn't take the pause and
Yeah.
slow down and say, gosh, how are our people doing? Are
Mhm.
we having genuine conversations with our employees, specifically our managers who are trying to navigate, the
Mhm.
workflow and things like that? And then you go through the great resignation that was happening because people were
Mhm.
just fed up, the quiet
Absolutely.
quitting, there's all of these things that are happening. We need to pay attention to how our employees are feeling because right now, with the recession, people are continuing to get laid off. People are struggling and have fears and they're exhausted. And so actually in these corporate spaces right now, they're having to do more and more with less staff.
Yeah,
So
I'm
it's
I'm
this
seeing that
vicious
too.
cycle. We've got to stop in
Mhm.
corporate America. We
Mhm.
have to stop it.
Yeah.
You're going to lose good people. And unfortunately, when they go, they're now navigating some mental health challenges or physical impact related
Yeah.
to what they've been experiencing, which is just hustling, doing
Yeah.
too much and not enjoying the things
No,
around
you
them.
lose your passion about why you started to do whatever you were doing in the first place, because even if you're loving what you're doing, if you're just absolutely eat, breathe, and sleep only that, and you're constantly on, like your body is constantly in this state of,
Tense, gotta
yeah, vigilant awareness, like it just, like, how do you, that is not a great place for your physical body to hang out in for too long. And it makes me think when you started talking about remote working, and I hadn't thought about this in a while, but it was like almost like because there was a belief, I think, out there in the corporate world from a lot of leaders and a lot of
mm,
organizations that remote working people are goofing off, right? Or doing slacking off or whatever. So it's almost like, okay, so if you were a productive worker kind of pre the pandemic and then you shifted into this, it was like somehow there was like almost like a quiet like missive underneath this. Like I have to prove
right.
double than I already was proving in the office that I'm working. And it was
Yes.
like, I remember talking to people and working with people right in the heart. Like they had their kids at home. That you're right. They're like a kitchen tables, everybody's school, work, the Wi-Fi is not working,
Yes.
all of these challenges. And to your point, so much was not being like, okay, let's all just take a collective breath, which you and I are
Mm,
both big
big
fans
on.
of.
Big
It's
on.
like, take the
Yeah.
pause, take a breath, let your nervous system have a break in this space because number one, you're not going to come up with a great solution for how to navigate forward or through anything that that's on your plate that you're facing by being in this hyper vigilant
Right.
burnout
The
stress.
activated state
Yeah.
of stress. Exactly.
Exactly. What do you find, I'm curious, what do you find when you're working with leaders and you're working in the corporate environment? What does that look like? Like, what is all that burnout and like, what does what do you hear? What do you see? What are people doing? Again, as best they think they can to try to
Right.
navigate this, but what does it look like?
Well, it's interesting because, it can look different for different
Mhm.
people. But here's a great example. I have this program, it's a 6-month program called the Leverage Academy. And it's where we bring up, up to 10 managers in a company together for this 6-month journey where it's a collaborative space where they're learning to develop the skills to lead with intention.
Mm,
And it's interesting because throughout the groups that I have worked with, in each of the groups, there has been somebody very in that burnout stage.
yeah.
Like, so what does it sound like? What does it look like? It's stress. I want to clarify this. Stress leads to burnout.
Mhm.
Stress, good, we can have good stress, we can have all kinds of
Yeah.
stress, but chronic stress,
Mm,
that's what leads to burnout.
mhm.
And so stress, hypervigilant, we're activated, we got to
Yeah.
get things done. We got to hurry up.
Checking the phone, checking email, not feel like you can step
Burnout
away.
sounds and looks very different. It's
Mm.
it's the opposite. So you feel you're a
Mm.
little more defeated. You don't care. You're more irritable.
Mm.
Um, and how can that show up? It can show up, maybe in the workplace, the person's missing deadlines more frequently. They're
Oh.
feeling less organized. So they're a little bit
Mhm.
more in overwhelm, and every day is like, well, I just can't keep up, or it's the systems aren't working. There's a resistant feeling that you can feel in that regard. Um, and so they may just be showing up a little more cynical.
Mm.
And so I think when leaders are paying attention to that, and you're picking up on that, you can just lean in and drop a question in.
Mhm.
Tell me what you're really, enjoying in your role.
Yeah.
You're going to hear those, I don't know, people are feeling more deflated. So then once you're in burnout, it takes a while to backtrack and get the support you need to get
That's a
out of
really good point. I think that everybody thinks, "Oh my gosh, I come crashing down, and then I'm just gonna take a spa day," or I don't know, whatever, fill in the blank, whatever the
it. It
quick
takes
fix
time.
is.
It
Eh
takes
yeah,
time.
that's a really
And
good
I've
point.
been there, unfortunately. I remember I used to work in an emergency room, feels like a lifetime ago,
Wow,
and talk about a hustle culture.
seriously. The
People in
medical
healthcare,
community is big
holy
time.
cow. And this was a long time ago. And I remember, the wanting to prove and putting in all the hours and having to learn, all of these things. Part of it was me against myself because
Yeah,
I wasn't setting my own boundaries. Part of it was the expectation, so there were a lot of different factors. But I do remember a place where I was really burnt out, and I loved this job, but I was burnt out. I was also working two other jobs. But I remember my manager taking me aside, and he said, I, I kind of had to let you go through this so that
yeah.
you could see what this is like. And
Mm,
here's what we're going to do. He was wonderful.
that
I kind
sounds
of wish
like
he
he
didn't let
was
me get that far into it, but that
seriously,
was a long
that
time
is
ago.
not
It's
what we're
all.
advocating. Yes, go ahead.
And here's the thing, I remember it very distinctly. I remember how it felt. I remember the period of time going through it. I remember the time it took to get out of it. And I remember him supporting me along the way, as well as my colleagues. So that just kind of brings you back to say that it can look and feel, sometimes we don't recognize it. But if we really slow down and pay attention to how we sound, how we feel, insert questions like, what brings you joy? This was very telling to me when I had a client a few months ago. She couldn't think of too many things.
Yeah, that's a
It took
huge
her a really
one.
long. She could tell me what she wasn't enjoying very
Exactly. That list
easily.
is long
Bam,
and
bam, bam,
clear.
bam, bam. Yeah. But to really sink into what brings her joy, it was difficult. And that actually is a great way to realize where somebody is,
Yeah,
in their
yeah.
workspace and personal space usually too.
So anybody listening, whether you're whatever role you play, whatever you're doing in life, at stopping, taking a pause, which you and I are both about more mindfulness, right, in life and
Yes.
bringing it into the corporate world is taking that space and getting curious about okay. And I love like because there's a spectrum, right? Like you
Hmm.
probably I love how you pointed out like at the beginning before you really get into deep burnout, there's all of this activity and energy and what have you. And then it kind of there's this shift and whether it's subtle maybe in some people or whether it just is like one
Right.
day you just don't want to get out of bed. Like if you're the one, I know for me when I was not enjoying what I was doing, like the snooze button 5 times was like it's like
Yeah.
now
We
I
all go
love to
through
get out of bed.
yeah, we all go through different periods where we're more motivated
Mhm.
than not. So I don't want people to think like, oh my gosh, I'm burnt out. But
Yeah.
I do think we need to pay closer attention to it. And I would
Yeah.
say on top of that, asking yourself these questions, support yourself. Like, who
Mhm.
is your, I want to call it your cheer team, your spark
Mhm.
team, whatever kind of team you want to call it. That's another question I like to ask people. Who is inspiring you? Who do you hang out with? Whether it's virtually, like I want to watch something that they're inspiring me,
Right, right.
whether it's one-on-one connection, however
Mhm.
that is, who is your spark team? Because we all have those people who
Mhm.
can just get us excited, get us feeling energized. And
Yeah.
if you don't have that, or if they're not sparking you, that's another indication.
Absolutely.
So I do think there's things from the corporate side that they can, corporate, the leaders, the
Mhm.
CEOs, the decision makers, that they can be doing. And I also think that we have a dual responsibility. We certainly have a responsibility to ourselves to
Mhm.
start paying attention to um, what is bringing us joy, and are we inserting that into our workday?
Mhm.
What is our mindset around having to get things done? Because here's the truth. I, as a coach, am busting a lot of preconceived notions that people have
Mhm.
around how hard they have to work.
Mm.
So, for example, I have a client that she wouldn't take a day off just to take a day off.
Oh.
So we just talked about it. If you did decide to take a day off just to take a day off,
Mhm.
what would that look like? And she was a little stuck. And now I can tell you, and I'm so excited that she does this. Once she understood it and saw the value in it, versus the
Mhm.
preconceived notion is, well,
Yeah.
that time is for sick time or
Right.
an actual week-long vacation. Lunches with her husband, hiking,
Mhm.
like days off where she's not in mom mode and not in work mode, and really not, doing anything other than spending the time with the person that she's taking. Some of it could be just doing things for herself.
Right.
And that's what I want to celebrate. Like,
Oh,
we have to bust these myths, these
we
things
do.
where we're telling ourselves, look, I'm talking to myself too, right?
Aren't we all? Exactly.
I
I
am
feel it
talking to
too.
myself too. Like, let's get ahead of it and say, hey, I'm going to take a well being day just because the
Mm.
work's going to get done,
Mhm.
right? But this is what, even setting boundaries for, I'm not taking any calls. If you can, I
Sure.
recognize that there are some people that their jobs and roles, they can't always do that.
Mhm.
But what happens often, and I have seen this in my program often, is that people just don't think they can.
Right.
And so stepping out of that discomfort to set the
Mhm.
boundary and see what's possible can be difficult. And it can be amazing. The people that are doing this in the program that I run, this is what excites me most. Yes, I want companies to, have great retention rates and all of that.
Mhm.
I want them for their people to have the skills. But the beautiful side effect of the program that I run is that people feel better.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
actually feel better.
Yeah.
A client of mine, I never thought I'd measure coaching success in this way. He was ingesting, digesting, all of the gestings, a
Mm.
bottle of Tums a week. A bottle of those colorful little Tums a
I know what
week
you're talking about, and I know people who do that.
has not, he had to make the transformation, the shifts. There were
Mhm.
habits he had to say bye bye to. Breaking up is hard to do, but he had to say goodbye. And now he has not had a bottle of Tums in over a year.
Wow. And this is why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because the possibility of having an amazing organization, an amazing, business and all of that does not need to come at the expense, which is where we've been, the expense of our own well-being. That's what
Right.
so many of us got taught. And then now we're in this messy transition where people are doing all sorts of things kind of in rebellion or response to, hey, this isn't going to work for me. And
Right.
it's like, what is the way forward? And your program is an example, which I love, of a way forward that brings it back to, okay, how do we simplify things? Because again, we don't need to make our life better by making it more
Right.
complicated. and
Exactly.
and I agree with you. What are the major myths that we're all walking around with in our brain, either implied. Sometimes they're explicitly, right, coming from the company, but also sometimes it's just like you're saying about a boundary. So I've done work with that too, where I say to clients, why are you taking a call or an email at 8 o'clock at night? Oh, well, my manager or somebody else is doing. It's like, okay, well, just because they're doing that doesn't mean that that's the right thing for you to do. And it's like,
Yes,
well, but, and to your point about the discover, but wait, if I'm the only one not doing it, then they're going to think I'm not working hard enough, right? So that's the place where we have to get into. It's like, what if you're a better, again, you're a better being, you're a better, whatever you're doing in your work, leader, employee, what have you, by taking excellent care of yourself. And those things aren't mutually
right.
exclusive, like we've all been. At least for you and I. I mean, I can't speak for the younger generations. You're right. They are
I
way
think
more
they are. Yes.
skeptical, which is a good thing. I said years ago, I was like, the the people like in our generation that are tired of all of this, and then the younger ones that haven't gotten to that place are going to change the world for the better. The corporate kind of that corporate structure is this big kind of institutional structures, and you're right, we're probably not going to just go in and plow it all down. So you
Right.
start at one organization, you start with one person, like it start one thought, one action that is different than what they've done for the last 5, 10, 30. You fill in the blank, however many years.
And we know that at the end of the day, if we can say this logically, but putting
Mhm,
it to practice, just like a lot of things, right? We know logically we have to put sunscreen on to,
mhm.
or avoid the sun at certain times, and we don't always do it. So we can say logically that the hustle culture and it is going to lead to burnout. We could say
Right.
that, right? There's probably studies out there that show that. And what we can also do is invite the corporate leaders who are decision makers in on this conversation to say, hey, when's the last time you paused
Mhm.
and just checked in on a higher level, right? Just
Yeah.
looking 30,000 feet down on what you're doing to develop and support your employees,
Mhm.
how people, your managers are checking in with the employees that they're overseeing,
Mhm.
and what ways, if you could just pick one, what would that look like in terms of how you want to offer greater support so that your people do stay with your company, for as long as possible.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
I
I think
think,
that's the goal. We want to
oh,
support
great.
people. We want to develop them. They can't be developed if their brains are fried. You mentioned it earlier. You said, we have to take that break
Mhm.
to, kind of settle our nervous system. We have to take that break to settle our brains, to allow
Yeah.
creativity to come back in. That break might be during the day. That break might be at 10 o'clock in the morning. That
Mhm.
break might be ending at 4:30 in the afternoon
Yeah.
because I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to be any more productive if I continue to push and push. Once in a while, get it. But the
Mhm.
continuous push and constantly on, it's not helpful to the person in their personal life. It's not helpful to them at work. And ultimately, if we change that thought and say, how can we give them more, opportunities to feel as if they can take that break
Mhm.
and come back refreshed? We have to understand that people get to choose, but we need to support it from the highest level to the mid management level. And
Yeah.
so that starts with changing our mindset. How do we view what we expect from people? How are we managing their performance in a way that's healthy and shows that they can also take, time to be with their loved ones, or just a day off just because. We don't want to continue to churn in the way that we are because it's not effective.
Yeah. And it's very listening to you speak about this, and I agree with, everything, and it's like it just came to me. It's like all of this is so fear-based, right? Because if we allow an employee to take off just because, it's like, "Oh my gosh, something's going to get missed." Right? Right? There's this fear, like, to
Right.
me, and I don't know, like, because we didn't get into a lot of the detail about what the myths are, but they're driven, I think, a lot by fear. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, if we pull all the start pulling these layers back, and we start to say, okay, fear is what's keeping us, trying to motivate an employee, try to motivate a team, trying to be a leader through fear rather than trust and, what I would say, love, even though love and corporate corporate pride
They say,
are like,
what?
wait,
What?
wait, what? But it
But it's
is
connection, right?
connection. Exactly. Connection,
Connection results through relationships. Let's
support, like
develop
you're
these
saying.
relationships.
Yeah.
Let's be mindful of what people are experiencing and the change in the world, how that's affecting them,
Mhm.
um, and make sure that we're offering some options for them to, you know, be supported, whether
Yeah.
that's coaching, whether that's development, because people crave development. That
Yeah, they
excites
do.
them, at least. And I'm raising my hand because mm,
Forever
I
learner over
love that.
here.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Stacey reads 10 books a day. Um, so if you ever need a book recommendation, go to Stacey. But those are the things we have to think about, the things that motivate. All right. We get in this task master mindset. These are the
Mm,
things we have to do. It's like,
yeah.
oh, that makes it, it just makes me feel like I have sandpaper on my body when I
Mhm,
talk about it. Yes, we
mhm.
have to get things done. There's goals, there's tasks, all those things are really important. And
Yeah.
let's bring a little joy into it. Let's bring
Yeah.
some motivation. Let's bring support in along the way. Because the truth is, most senior leaders or even HR professionals, they don't have the time and bandwidth to support the managers inside a company in the way that they really need it.
That's a good point. I want to ask you a question about this bringing joy intentionally into your like work day. So, if you offered something to somebody listening, what could they do, no matter who they are, that brings like that intentional focus of joy? What would you offer somebody listening? Because I just think it's juicy, and I want to know what you have to say for me.
Okay. So there's lots of things, and I'll keep it short and sweet.
Okay.
How we start our day sets the stage.
Mhm.
This is what I believe to be true. And so I think if we can be really intentional about what brings us that joy in the start of the day and
Mhm.
call it in, instead of rolling out of bed, maybe I just want to read a little bit of my book. Maybe I want to take a quick walk, or maybe not so quick walk. How I choose to spend my morning versus diving right in. Oh, I'm going to go right to the emails. I invite all of your listeners to really think about how they start their day. And if they had their magic wand, what would they do differently in starting their day? Maybe it's possible, maybe it's not. But
Yeah.
I always believe that there's a little tweak that we can make to
Mhm.
bring in how we set our day up.
I agree. Whether you have 5 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever that is,
Yeah.
making whatever the time, right? Like it, because I think a lot of what happens then is like, I don't have time to do that, Helen. That sounds really wonderful,
Bust
but
that myth.
right,
I'm going to say,
exactly.
well, maybe you could get up early. I mean, I may have a few questions.
Sure,
Maybe you
sure.
can't.
Yep.
So then, if you can't, I would talk to the person and I'd say, well, what is possible?
Yeah,
Let's
there's a
let's
great question too.
we have to think about, if you're telling me there's zero zilch nothing's going to work,
Yeah,
then you're closed off.
yeah.
But if you open it up just a smidge, just peeking through the door almost, then
Mhm.
I'd say, what is possible? And a number of my clients have done this exercise and are really valuing putting themselves first.
I
And
love it.
that's where I would want, put yourself first.
Put
before
yourself
you
first.
start going into your emails, into
Mm,
all the socials, into any of that, just put yourself first. And what it might require, Stacey, is to start thinking about, what do I want for myself? What
mm,
does bring me,
mhm.
whether it's joy or calm or
Yep.
something that's personal to you before you start giving to others.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's so true in any whether we're talking about work, like all of it, because it's all interconnected. As you and I know, we agree on that, and it really is this like, what is possible, and if you don't know, because I think sometimes that can be scary. It's like, well, I don't know, then just be open, like let
Right.
yourself have like just be like, ooh, try something, experiment. If you don't like it, you maybe get up 5 minutes or 10 minutes earlier, and that's like you're like, all right, this isn't working. I need to adjust something else differently. It doesn't have to be, well, I did one thing and it didn't work. It's this
Mm-hmm.
like fluid experiment with ourselves that maybe you find something that brings you joy and you do it for a year, and then all of a sudden it doesn't have the
It doesn't.
same.
Yeah.
And so give yourself permission to be like, ooh, maybe there's something else that would feel even truer and, more welcoming in the morning these days. So I'm with you. As somebody who just gave up my ritual over the last year of coffee, coffee was such a morning ritual for
Ooh.
me.
Mm-hmm.
And my body is like not enjoying it. It's like, what else? Because to your point, I want something that feels very anchoring and grounding. That's one of the coffee was like a grounding thing for me, the
Mm-hmm.
ritual of that. So what other things? I haven't quite found it. I mean, there are things I do that I love, but now this conversation sparks my own interest again in asking.
Well, and it's going to be different for everyone. And
Absolutely.
it's funny because my husband would be somebody that he would enjoy just getting up, having a cup of coffee. My mindset years ago used to be like, you're up, go, go. I got to get everything done before, the
Yep.
kids wake up. And I almost wore that badge,
Mhm.
not in a positive way. Like,
Yeah.
hey, look at me, 9 o'clock. You want to know
Uh,
what I've done? I've done this, and this. And then I heard myself and I was like, ew,
mhm.
who are you?
Mhm.
And as much as I love getting things done so I can then, move on to other things, I've really had to practice and learn and enjoy some of the other things. I don't need to
Yeah.
be like my husband. I don't drink coffee, but I can enjoy things and not judge it in the
Yeah.
morning thinking, well, it must be nice because I've done all of this. Like we do that in the
Yes,
workplace too.
we
So
do.
that's why I say just invite a little bit of intrigue around how would you love to start your day if you
Mm.
had choices, like,
Yeah.
and we do have choices, but if you felt like you were in control of it. The other thing I'm going to drop real quick, I asked
Do.
this of
I can't wait.
I
What are
know
you
I'm
gonna
getting
say
all
next?
excited. I asked a client yesterday, who was we were talking about something very similar
Mhm.
and trying to figure out the things that she enjoys. And I said, have you ever created a summer bucket list? Because by the way, it's still
Mhm.
summer through September. I know people like to like shut it down next
I'm
month,
with
but
you.
that's not true.
I'm so with you.
So she said, a summer bucket list. I don't even
Mhm.
know what I would do. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be expansive.
Yeah.
It could be, so for her,
Mhm.
she loves to cook. So she wanted to learn how to create a new recipe. That was one thing she came up with. She came up with a couple of others. But it's something that my girls and I did this summer, and we're having fun just saying, I'm taking tomorrow off and I'm not sure what we're doing yet because we have a few things, that we're thinking about, but we're going to have some fun.
I
And we're
love
going
it.
to take one of the summer bucket list items and see where I'll come back part two and let you know.
Yes, please. You can come back to the podcast anytime because this is so
Thank
juicy
you.
and I love it. It reminds me years ago, I did a summer bingo board, similar,
Oh,
right?
that's so fun.
And it was
Yeah.
like taking a sunrise or
Yes.
sunset or have my favorite snowball flavor, which only people in Maryland get the
Uh-huh.
snowball reference with marshmallow
Yes.
and you name it. But things that, again, bigger things like taking a day off or going on an overnight, but also things that I think sometimes we miss. And I just want to interject that into when
Yeah.
people are listening to this. It doesn't have to cost a lot. It doesn't have to be
Exactly.
some big fancy thing that I love. I don't really love getting up super early every day, but I do love a sunrise. So like to
Mm.
do that once in the summer and really take that in, get the picture. I love then like having beautiful photographs of the sunrise. Like that's a thing for me. And you're right, you reminding me because we're still in the heat and heart of summer.
Yes.
What is it that we want to do? Because I think times we automatically already start looking toward whatever's coming next and we forget about what's already right here with us.
Absolutely. I love that. I love the bingo.
Yeah.
And I just, and I'm having fun with the summer bucket list. And like you
Oh,
said,
so much fun.
we went rainbow chasing. It
Oh,
rained last week, one of the
into
days,
that.
and the sun started to come out. We got in the car and saw this amazing
Oh,
rainbow. So it can be
yep.
really small things like that to bigger things you get to choose.
I love it.
But it brings me joy. And when I feel more joyful in my personal life, it shows up in my work.
Yeah. And it ripples out. And to your point, everything that we do that brings us that joy, that brings us back to ourselves, it's like, how could we not be a better whatever it is
Yeah.
in showing up in any parts of our life, but by feeling that? Because we're giving from such a place of, we're not giving from a depleted place. We're offering ourselves in such a whole place, which I absolutely love. And again, not there's no sense of perfection here, just again,
Oh,
coming
yeah.
back into that. So I could talk to you, as I said, I say this to
Oh,
so many of my guests, like we could chat for hours, I am sure. So maybe you are definitely going to need to come back and we'll pick another juicy topic for us to unpack together. But thank you so much, Helen, for making time for us today, for
yes.
offering your wisdom and your expertise. I know you work really in that leadership, that middle space, which I think is wonderful because so many coaches work right at the executive level, which I know you do as well too. But this space where, again, sometimes I think that that group of people who are doing so much and influencing in so many ways, we don't always shine the spotlight on them. And so I just
Yeah.
love that that's your
Thank you.
focus and your attention. So thank you. If people
Yes.
want to work with you or they want to get to know you better, they want to come into the Helen world, where can they find you?
Yes, yes. So you can go to my website, helenyoungcoaching.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, which is Helen Young-McLaughlin, McLaughlin. There's that little hyphen in there that can be
We'll put that
annoying.
in the show notes for people too to make it
Oh,
easier.
good. Yes, so connect with me on LinkedIn, and I would love to learn a little bit more about you and what your listeners are up to.
Sweetness. Well, thank you so much for being here. If you want to talk about this topic or any other topic, you can always pop over to my Facebook group, Everyday Enchantment, because we are talking all about how to be more mindful and to bring more joy into our lives. So thank you, Helen, for your wisdom today. And I will see all of you on the next episode. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in. Get all the delicious details and links we've mentioned in this episode in the show notes below. If you'd like to chat about this episode or learn more about how to work with me, come visit me in my private Facebook group, Everyday Enchantment, or check out my website, staceyandon.com, where you can find out more about my Leap of Faith coaching, my Map Makers group program, and the School of Intuitive Magic. Plus a special shout out for all the production and editing of this show by Richard Wilmore. That's it for now, love. Here's to living a life enchanted. See you soon.